We are here at apexart TV with Alex Branch, our fellow who just came back from Greece less than a week ago, I think?
Monday.
Monday,
Yeah,
okay.
only a few days.
Good. So we still have your memories right up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And generally the way I start the conversations, I ask you what kind of anxiety you had before you left and what expectations you might have had that you were worried about.
Mm-hmm. I was definitely anxious just about leaving, just sort of in general, as you know, packing everything up. I wasn't quite sure what to bring. Also, I didn't really know what to expect when I got there. I knew I was going to be staying in a gallery space, so I couldn't quite imagine what it would be like.
What was it like?
But it was an apartment,
Uh-huh.
up high, so like 7 floors up.
Oh.
But it was a little apartment space, so. But I didn't know, what to expect. But I was also very excited about it at the same time as having anxiety. And I'd had some things happen where a roommate was moving out and a roommate was moving in, so that kind of added to the whole anxiety, I think, of leaving and having things shifting at home at the same time.
Well, as you found out, we plan everything out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find this initially to be a comforting situation that you didn't really have to think about what you were going to do and where you were going to go, that all of the plans were made?
I think there was a little bit of comfort in that, but also I didn't know how to gauge time very well, how long it took to get from one place to the other. Also how long it would actually take to be, how time functioned there is different than how it functions here. So when I had scheduled meetings with someone, here I feel like it's a lot quicker and shorter, but these meetings would actually go on for a very long time, and I didn't know, when to end it. So I found myself, in the very beginning, being late to maybe the next thing because I didn't know how to gauge. I think it was around the second day, or maybe it was the second or third day, I had a meeting and then I had a language lesson right after that. And the meeting ended up being 3.5 hours long. And then I was racing to the language lesson, and the language lesson was supposed to be 2 hours long, but it ended up being almost 4 hours, and it was Greek, and so I was also still jet lagged and trying to understand, but I didn't realize, it was kind of a time warp a little bit.
Well, you were immediately submerged into cultural differences.
Yes, yeah, pretty much instantly, I felt like.
Yeah, that sense of time, especially in a culture like Greece, is just so different from ours. There's a lot of history there.
Yeah, everywhere.
You went from here to there, and you find this cultural situation of time and this real preoccupation with history. Yeah? Yeah,
and there's remnants and ruins everywhere. You just scratch the ground and there's a village right there. And I was really surprised by how they'll try to build something or do renovations, and the relationship that the city has to that. It'll halt. Oftentimes, if they find something, it will halt the building. So there was an area where they were trying to build part of expand the subway system, and as they were digging, they found ruins, so they had to stop. One way around that is to put a glass structure over the top. So I kept seeing these places where it would be a house where they were trying to renovate, and then they'd come across, they dug into some ruins. So then they had to put this glass over top of it and then continue. They could continue after that.
Does it have to be accessible to the public, or?
Not accessible, but you have to expose it that someone could look. So I was walking through this one neighborhood, and there was this glass floor that you could look right. These people would have to walk over the glass floor to go to their home, and many of the museums are built on top of these ruins in the same manner. The Acropolis Museum is like that. The Benaki Islamic Art Museum is also on ruins. So almost every time, it feels like they're just everywhere. I also heard that sometimes builders will try to hide the fact that.
I would imagine.
And they found a statue that was kind of thrown out in a river because they were trying to keep.
We just had a fellow that came back from Israel, and she participated in archaeological digs, and it was the same situation where you were only allowed to dig in certain places, and I guess as soon as you found something, you had to ring the alarm, and people would come and tell you don't dig there anymore. So what's something that you do here as kind of a comfort activity that you didn't do there and found a substitute for, unless that's too obtuse a question?
Something here that I couldn't find a comfort?
Well, it could be a breakfast routine. It's something that you do, and because all of a sudden you leave, you can't do it anymore.
Coffee. Making coffee. I couldn't do that.
Okay.
And I tried doing that. I got just coffee filters, and then I got coffee, and then I would make I used a paper cup, and then just tried to pour hot water and make the coffee that way. And
I'm trying to remember what Greek coffee is otherwise.
there's a couple different versions. There's Greek coffee, which is made in this special pot, very small pot with a long handle, and it's very strong, and it has sort of a muddy bottom to it, and supposedly you can there are certain people that can read your fortune from this, but there's that coffee, and then there's this sort of cold cappuccino that's about this big, and it's a cappuccino sort of, but I just kind of wanted coffee. But they do have, you can get espresso and water, so I ended up doing that after attempting with the filters.
Do they not have a Starbucks?
I think I saw one.
Yeah.
I did see one.
You don't want to go in, but
I didn't go in.
Okay, good for you.
And I tried the different coffees, and I liked the Greek coffee, but I did want just strong coffee.
Okay. It's a culture much more of older people than young people like here. Here in the city, you walk around and the mean age is 35 and younger. There are a lot of old people around, and the culture seems to have a greater observance, history around people. What did you feel in terms of the interaction of the population?
Between age groups?
Yeah.
I would say it was more mixed, probably. People do, even with the crisis, people do still seem to go out at night, and some people do, to restaurants and things like that, and there's sort of spend time there. They spend time out together, but
for some reason we seem to be sending people to, if not war zones, areas where there's serious difficulty going on. You found yourself really smack in the middle of a long-term issue there that, as you noted, may or may not be coming to a head on any given day, because they don't really seem to be able to resolve the situation. What was your feeling? Did you come away sympathetic to the European Union or to Greece?
To Greece, definitely to Greece.
Why?
Talked to everybody I could about the situation. I also went to, a lot of the protests, and I did go to some talks and a symposium, and I just feel like they've been through a lot, and I feel like I feel like the best way for them to I think it'll be difficult, but and I don't really know. I mean, it's difficult to know what will happen, but it seems like if they had control of their own money, that they would be able to hopefully, they come away with it, in a, I think.
I'm not sure if they have any money.
Yeah, they don't.
Even if they
right.
convert it to drachma. Greece is one
There's
of the...
some talk about them having drachma and also the euro at the same time, but it's true, they don't.
Yeah, they can take the euro if they choose to, even if they're not part of the EU. Yeah, so...
Yeah. It's difficult though, because when I spoke to people, this has been going on for so long, and everyone is so tired. And I don't know. It's a difficult situation, but
it is what it is. Yeah, no, it'll be interesting.
It was also going to the protests. It was hard not being able to understand what people were saying, and because I couldn't really understand what they were saying, but people seem really because it changes every day. It changes daily whether or not they're going to stay in the EU or they're going to go out. There were always camera crews outside the presidential palace, where he doesn't actually stay there, but so, but the thing that I came away feeling was just that it's a complicated issue, but it's also, it feels like the EU, there's so many different countries, and each country has a different culture and so different from each other. And Germany compared to Greece is so different just in their daily life and their schedule and how they operate. In what's important to that culture. So I think it's really difficult to be under the same umbrella. And of course, there's going to be a power dynamic within that. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like having these restrictions imposed on them, it's kind of counter to what that culture is, and so I don't know the way that they can actually.
Greeks are famous for not paying taxes.
Yes, there is that.
Germans pay taxes.
There is that.
And they resent kind of what's happening. But the freewheeling way of life in Greece is clearly a very different than the Teutonic.
Right.
Model.
I spoke to some people about the issue with taxes, and some people said that it's difficult even if you. A lot of things are done in cash, so that there aren't taxes, so that you can't really trace it. So, which was also a problem because when the ATMs ran out, you couldn't use your credit card anywhere. But.
It's another cultural difference, huh?
Yes, yeah.
So tell me, we say to people that during our fellowship, you will be bored, lonely, and depressed at different times. What was your frame of mind when you got there for the first couple of days? And give me an example of each of the 3 states if you can.
Bored, lonely,
Depressed.
and depressed. Bored, I wouldn't say I was bored at all. It was there was too much sort of crammed in, and I was trying to understand where I was, and so I wouldn't say bored. Depressed, also not enough time to be depressed. I was not feeling depressed. And then, what was the third one?
Lonely?
Lonely. I also didn't actually I didn't feel lonely, but I did feel maybe disoriented, and I felt maybe frustrated as well. And
Frustrated why?
frustrated because mostly with maneuvering, because I didn't know, I couldn't really understand the signs very well because they were all in Greek, and they'd be in Greek, and then there was the Latin underneath version, but it was still really hard for me to register where I was or what those streets meant. And I'm used to getting around using my phone, and I have a bad sense of direction, and so I would get lost a lot, go the wrong way, so because I couldn't use a phone, so
Okay.
I had to use a map, and
But with a relaxed time imperative to get where you had to go.
relaxed time because Greek time is.
Yeah.
But I still was operating on
Right, so
my
that-
own time, and I would be on time, and then people would say I was English. They called it English because if I was on time, I mean, there were some instances where I was late because I did misgauge it, but it was not. The other person was often
Right.
late anyway. Yeah.
Was that being very American?
Which part?
Being frustrated at that?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
Might have been.
So of course we talk about this fact that we expect you, although I must say you are emerging as one of the better adjusted fellows if you didn't have any great difficulty with being bored, lonely, or depressed, which is good. But we do send you to a therapist.
Yeah. Yes.
Had you been to a therapist before?
Yes, I have before.
And did you find it on the fellowship to be a good valve, a good opportunity to talk to somebody? How did that go?
No, I felt like it was actually, I liked talking to him, but I wasn't sure really, since it was just one time, I wasn't sure how much we could actually talk about.
Oh, okay.
Also, since it's talking, English wasn't his first language, so he was a good English speaker, but there were some times when I didn't understand, which was interesting. It made for an interesting experience, and I think if we'd been able to meet more, that might have, it might have, because you get used to each other, the way that you speak. I did think it was also interesting how he kind of related things to Greek mythology.
Oh.
So that was really interesting. But it was different than, I think if I would compare that with, say, the tango lesson, the difference with language and how one is a physical sort of activity and one is verbal, dependent on. Those two were very, very different. Because with the tango lesson, that was very early on, and Greek sounded, I didn't know what, it would just go right over. I couldn't grab onto any sounds at all. I didn't expect it to be that foreign, I guess. Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, I knew it wasn't Latin based, but for some reason I thought it would sound a little more familiar. So it didn't sound familiar at all, and it would just kind of go right by. So
Did you try speaking with a Greek accent?
when I spoke, or you mean when I was speaking English?
Yeah, no, there's this funny thing that happens when you go to countries and you really don't understand the language. You almost start incorporating, I mean, not realistically to talk to somebody, but you begin to hear yourself saying something.
Yeah, actually, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So one of the things we say to people also is that we have begun to feel that artists were becoming observers rather than participators.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our program is about getting you on the other side of that sensibility, so that we're not the artist kind of looking at something, thinking how we can digest it in a creative way, but rather, you got a tango, you're not going to be taking pictures of people tangoing.
Mm-hmm.
How was that for you? Did you find yourself feeling more immersed in an activity schedule while you were there than you might have had in your normal life here?
Yes, and doing things like the tango, which I wouldn't have done, and
Are you jonesing to tango now?
it was fun. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was fun, but
And I want to ask you a second example, but again, one of the main directives of the program, intensive program, is to have you do things that you otherwise wouldn't do that will serve as creative catalyst in your work and life subsequently. So giving me a second example of something that you did that you wouldn't have otherwise done, that you felt had that kind of energizing effect.
Well, I think working. Let me think for a second. I have volunteered before, but I haven't worked with refugees, and that's also something that I haven't had the opportunity to do, and I felt like that was really a really valuable experience for me, talking to people that had come from, Syria, all over.
People with really serious issues.
Yes.
It kind of makes what we do seem far away. And what happens with a lot of people is that it gives them an opportunity to reevaluate their own work in terms of some kind of either efficacy or increased relevance to life. Did you find that you were thinking about how to either incorporate experiences that you did there into the work that you do, or did you see new avenues that might be open for exploration?
I definitely did, and I feel like it was so much, because it felt like there was just sort of one thing after the other that I feel like there's a lot there. It might take me a while to sort through all of it, I think, but definitely. And there was just a lot to think about, and just which I feel like I'll have to kind of unravel as I sort of acclimate here.
You do. Things will pop up,
yeah,
at odd times in relevant situations. Good. Tell me something that you really didn't like doing.
Oh, there was a play that I went to, and it was after a really long day, and I got there and I sat in my seat, and this man came over and said it was his seat. I knew he said it was his seat, but I couldn't, and I couldn't tell him it wasn't, but I was trying to pantomime and
Did you have a ticket?
Yeah, and I showed him the ticket, but he still was insisting that I was in the wrong place. And finally I found someone who could verify that they were also in the. So that happened, and then the play started, and they had English subtitles way up there.
Yeah.
And so I was watching the play, but I just didn't. I wasn't reading the subtitles, and so I ended up just watching it, but it was all in Greek, and
so to speak.
Right. And it was, I didn't.
Well, that's not so bad, like sometimes there are things that people get on the wrong bus and find themselves out in the
Oh, there was actually, this was really funny in the end, not at the time. But so I was going to the cultural center, though, NASA's cultural center, and I had looked it up ahead of time, thought I knew it was off my map. So I was using this map that I had, and I was getting pretty good, getting a little, maybe thinking I was getting too good, getting a little too cocky, but so then I thought I knew where I was going, and it was off the map, but seemed like I knew. So I went, got off the subway, was walking, and I asked somebody where the Onassis Cultural Center was, and that I thought it was really close by, and he's, no, it's really far. You're gonna have to get on the bus again. And I said, really? I thought it was right here. And he said, no. You gotta go on the bus, and the bus is there. So I thought maybe he's, confused. Maybe that's not right. So I asked another person. He told me the same thing. So then I thought it was the case, and I got on the bus. Everyone was very helpful. The bus driver, this other person on the bus, she actually walked me there. We were on the bus for a long time.
Okay. They were right.
So we get off, and she takes me there. That's it right there. So I looked weird, and I go inside, just kind of a plain building. And I'm looking around, and it just doesn't really look like a cultural center. There are a couple paintings on the back wall, but so I went up and asked this woman at a desk if this was a cultural center, Onassis Cultural Center, and she said yes. And I still was really confused, and so I asked two more people in this waiting area. It looked like it was a hospital. But they don't call the Onassis Cultural Center the Onassis Cultural Center. They call it some other name. And it wasn't. I was pointing at the Onassis Cultural Center, and they're all, yeah, you're here. This is it. And I just finally, I asked, I finally found someone that said, no, that's not. It's on the same street, but it's really far. And so then I was out, and there's this highway there that you can't cross. It's two highways, you can't cross it, and I needed to go the other way, so I didn't know how to get across, and I had to walk down, and there's kind of an underpass that goes, but someone told me there's an underpass, so I went, but the underpass didn't go under, it went this way. And so then I kept walking to try to, and then I finally came to another underpass, and then I went under that, and got back eventually.
One of the things people invariably tell us with our program, because we give you so much independence and this kind of situation, is that they come back with a sense of independence and strength in situations, not to overplay it, than before they left, just because you're in so many of these situations where you have to take power of it, and it just seems to be very positively empowering for people.
Yes, definitely.
Good. Give me an example of a person that you met with that you really enjoyed talking to, and why.
Marietta. I went to the Stoa where and made paper with her. I enjoyed meeting with many people. I mean, everyone that I met, I enjoyed. But I'll just pick that one out of.
Did anybody complain to you about the U.S.?
Let me think about that.
Younger people probably wouldn't.
No, I can't think of anybody that did complain to me about it. No. What would you imagine they would complain about?
Well, I don't know. It's just
US.
interesting for us as we go around the world to see who Korea, for example, likes the U.S. a lot. Ethiopia likes the U.S. a lot. Other countries don't always like us quite so much because we have not always been positive in their past.
Right.
And very often when I travel, that's when I learn
How
U.S.
other-
history.
Yes.
And they say, oh, do you guys know that you did this in the 50s? And generally, no. Okay, so you met with her and made paper,
Yes.
and it was a relatable experience. You felt like you were with somebody doing something productive.
Yes, when we were doing that. Yes, but I also, it was interesting just talking to her beforehand. I enjoyed the paper making as well, but, and it was in, this was really interesting. It was this stoa, you know, the stoas between the buildings, the space
Yes, of
between
course.
the buildings, and
The stoa.
so there were lots of shops in there, and because of the crisis, a lot of these shops have closed down. They've been closed for a long time. The roller gates are down. A lot of shops move around because they.
These are like all the storefronts.
Yes, but the stoa is inside, so it's they're storefronts, but they're inside. It almost makes kind of a courtyard area inside, recessed.
Okay.
So this particular stoa had been shut for years and years and years, and so these architects took this space and let artists come in, artists, musicians. They have to make an application, and then they come in. So there are a number of them inside of this stoa in different shops, and they were there for, I believe it was 6 months, or maybe it could have been longer. That they'd been there in the spaces, and there's some kind of regulation where they have to have a community program a couple days out of the month, so they're supposed to do that, and they also kind of cross-pollinate each other, you know, working together in this, you know, on collaborating on projects and things. So this particular space, they actually ended up doing more than just two. They did lots of community programs, but it had been beforehand. It had been some kind of social. It was a printing shop before, and that's what it became again. But they had it had been printing documents, kind of government, social security type documents. So we ripped up those papers, and so there were a lot of little dots, the dotted lines that showed up in the paper, but also it was just I just enjoyed talking to her. She told me about, you know, how she'd come to Greece because she was from the EU originally but had a Greek father. So it was always interesting hearing how people had come there. Some people that came from other places, or, you know, people that were just
But with
from
Greek
there.
roots.
Yeah, she
generally?
had Greek roots.
How did you assess the economic situation affecting the artists and creativity and that sense? Did it make people a lot of people feel that the economic factor in New York is not always a positive thing for the arts.
Right, and people also talk about, when the economic situation in New York was rougher, that it was a more sort of abundant time. So that's something I wondered about myself. And it was hard for me to really gauge it. So I think people are kind of frustrated, people that I spoke to, about the lack of course, funding in Greece under the circumstances. But it seems like people are doing things, but I couldn't get a total clear idea of how it's actually, but it was something I was really curious about how.
Did all of the people that you met speak about the economic crisis?
Pretty much, but I asked them about it, regularly.
Sure.
Asked them about it because, and some people just seemed like they were. It's so often that there's this buildup that a decision's going to be made, and then nothing happens, and then it happens again. And even while I was there for just this short amount of time, I sort of saw it happen. It's only one month that I was there when they've experienced this over 5-year period of having that happen again and again. But yeah.
I think it's the Charlie Brown analogy with Lucy taking the football
right.
every time somebody is going to kick it.
Yes.
But it almost seems like that's their strategy, and there are business strategies that are about getting right up to the line when you don't want to go through with something and tiring the other side out, whether it's the EU or the population or whatever.
Yeah, or the government actually. Yeah, it's a game. It's kind of a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to the people, but.
No, not to the people.
Okay, so tell me how good Greek feta and yogurt is.
It's delicious. Yeah, and the yogurt comes in. One type of yogurt comes in a little dish, a terracotta dish. Which I kept keeping them, but I couldn't bring them all back with me. But and the feta comes in different, all sorts of different, an arrangement of different styles, creamy feta, not just crumbly.
How did you relate to the food in general? What did you miss, and how did you deal with it?
What did I miss there?
No, what did you miss from here?
From here,
because again, you get into your routine, and
yes.
It's like if every morning you have the same thing for breakfast here, and then you're there and you don't have it.
I would say just the coffee is the only thing. It was that it was also having the coffee in my space,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the only thing. Other than that, I was ready for.
You're a meat eater,
Yes.
so you enjoyed.
Yes, because there's a ton of meat there.
Goat, a lot of goat.
Goats, yes, goats and beef and pork, souvlaki.
And most of the time you were eating in small little places, or?
I ate at home some. I would just make stuff at home at night, and then I would eat gyros a lot.
You would eat what?
Gyros, like a souvlaki.
Oh,
like,
yeah. I'm thinking
because
gyros.
those are not. I was eating money.
Gyro.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because those are all over.
Yeah.
And, but I really liked the dried. They have these weird dried fruits that I really liked. That are the rind of
mess.
Oh, mastilla. Yeah.
Because that's close to a word
Resin.
that we have, which is not mystic. mastic,
Mm-hmm.
which is a sticky thing, so the derivation of the word, and that
Is
kind of,
the same.
yeah, you seem
Yeah.
to be quite taken with that.
Yeah, it's
I want to try it.
yeah, it's really good, and it comes in different. It comes in a powder form where you can cook with it. You can put that in bread or things like that. But then it also comes in the little grains, the tears.
Yeah,
And
that
those
sounds
are
really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like a piney sort of taste.
Okay, I am almost to the end of my questions, so I'm going to rely on you for one or two anecdotes, and then we will have taken up enough of your time for this.
Okay. One thing that I thought was I was really shocked about was just that Greek people don't call themselves Greek. They call themselves, I might be pronouncing this a little bit wrong, but Hellenes. So not Greek. When everybody else, calls them either Greek or but nobody calls them.
Are they all Hellenists, or are there different groups?
It's Hellenes.
Oh, LNS?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's supposed to be. This is what I heard. So from someone's explanation from this, but I didn't actually look it up. So this is an explanation. But was that the first people, the first people were made out of like a stone that was thrown over somebody's a shoulder, and that was LNS, and that's where they came from. But
Did you get that?
I mean, I just sort of said that, I've never heard that before.
yeah. So yeah, I never heard that.
A person threw a stone.
Yeah.
Where'd the person come from?
Good
Like a
question.
god.
Yeah, like a god is a god, not just some person on the street.
Okay. Okay. And this is going back all to.
Kronos.
Okay. I will have to ask Heather more about this. Heather is our IT person who has been with us for 15 years, and after working in this location was in Greece for 6 years, hence our connection with Greece, and you may have even heard Heather's name from Blanca.
Yes.
And a thank you to Blanca for doing a really nice job.
Yes. Big thank you.
So do you want to go back?
I would definitely like to go back.
You had a good experience. Excellent.
Yeah, and I hope that things get ironed out for people over there. I don't know, the situation.
Did you get the sense life was bad there or good? Aside from what they were saying, I mean, your sense of.
As an outsider,
Yeah,
my sense.
did it seem like people were eating and living, and I don't want to lead you, but.
I mean, I was in one location is the thing, so I don't know. I didn't really go to the I mean, I went, to Idra, and I went to certain places, but I didn't go in the outskirts of the city, so I feel like my view is probably skewed in that manner, because
Okay.
I don't think, I did see people talked about that there didn't used to be homeless people in the city, and there are homeless people in the city. There are people eating out of the trash. And that's something that wasn't, in the past.
And do they tend to be LNS people? Or
That are eating out of the trash?
Or are they immigrants primarily?
I would say probably a mix. Yeah, a little bit of a mix, but
And you got the sense that it was primarily a homogeneous society, but there were now people coming in, and
Immigrants and refugees, yes.
right,
Yes. And that's a difficult situation because there are a lot of people that don't have jobs. There are a lot of people that, that are Greek that don't have jobs. And then I think it creates some tension because then there's refugees coming in and immigrants, and then it creates tension.
Sure.
I spoke to, when I was working at the soup kitchen, I spoke to a man that had come in from Syria on a boat with a smuggler, and he had tried to come in a number of times with falsified papers, and then he resorted to the smuggler and came in that way, and he was going to actually go on to
it would seem like a smart thing
outside,
to do.
To Sweden, but he'd been there for like 10 months. But also, when I was working there, I heard from a lot of people that they couldn't find work, and because of the situation. But also something that I heard was that sometimes people will work for no money because sometimes they will get paid and sometimes they won't get paid. So, you want to keep that job, so you'll work for no money. And a lot of people, still live with their parents as well, so
Okay.
in their 30s, they're living with their parents still.
I'm sure you'll be watching the news.
Yes.
With a different orientation toward seeing what goes on now.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen on Sunday?
I don't know. There are people that say the EU will suffer
If Greece leaves.
If Greece leaves. I don't know enough about the intertwined economic situation. I believe I recall that for the most part, when countries joined the EU, their economy got a lot better than it was.
Initially? You mean initially in the beginning?
Yeah, I don't really know over the longer term of what happened with some countries, and because I guess trade was maybe eased to the benefit of some countries. Like, I have no idea. So I don't know. I don't know. Society exists on so many levels that people on the bottom may not feel a lot. The people on the top with businesses, international, I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Germany doesn't have as much patience as... But we will find out, and I'm sure you'll be watching it too. Alex, thank you very much for your time, and it was a pleasure having you as a fellow.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.